The way you guys handle bulls
Sure.
is just so poetic. And the biggest criticism I have of the NFR is how little they film you guys working those bulls right after the bull ride.
Yeah.
It's the biggest mistake they make. But regardless, I've got so many questions wrapped up in all the statements I just made. But one thing though that you taught me early on, and I appreciate those kind words you said about my bullfighting, but you were always a huge proponent of freestyle.
Yep.
And you just saw it as part of bullfighting.
Sure.
And it didn't take me long to recognize that within the bullfighting community, there's kind of a split, or there was at least, that a lot of guys some guys wanted to just fall under the cowboy protection umbrella. Like they saw themselves as just that and not freestyle.
Yeah.
How do you think that played a role as you built your career?
So, let me just say that some of the guys that you see that you mentioned that maybe you didn't see go to the bullfights that just kind of fell in that cowboy protection piece. And I almost kind of consider myself as that kind of a guy too. I didn't go to a lot of bullfights. I went to the Wrangler bullfights, that when they were on the tail end, but I wasn't in the top 5 in the world or anything like that. The difference was, if you're willing to go to those bad suckers and call for them when there ain't nobody out there to help you, if you're willing to do that, and then it's just you and that bull, I always believed, and you probably heard me say this a lot, was then when you're cowboy protecting and a guy hits the ground, there's no question, boom, you'll go.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the guy that hesitates and goes, I don't know if I want to fight that bad dude. That's the same guy that when a bull gets a guy down and it's a wreck, he's probably going to go, and he's going to hesitate before he goes. And so I felt like from a mental aspect, they worked hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'd always have guys, and the way I fought bulls, as soon as the guy hits the ground, you go to that bull and try to make around with him. Because if you're taking the fight to them, instead of waiting to see if it's going to be a bad wreck, number one, you're going to be late. And number two, you're not going in with the same attitude of taking the fight to them. Mm-hmm. You're just trying to keep something bad from happening. Yeah. And I think they're totally different. And I would make myself, and I cut my teeth in pro rodeo under Neil Gay. And for the listeners that don't know, Neil Gay, was an incredible stock contractor. He knew bulls, but he knew production. And he knew that, hey, I may not have the greatest bull riders here at my event, and they all buck off or whatever. But if a bullfighter would go to them bulls and make a round and do something exciting, the crowd loved it, and then the gate would come open, and he would sell the show. And so that's what he expected out of bullfighters. Mm-hmm. And when I went down to Mesquite, got in there somehow, I would go to them bulls, and it caught his eye. And after the performance, he says, hey, I've got a bunch of TV performances, and I'd like to offer them to you. Man, I thought, oh, wow, that's great. The great Neil Gay offered me that and everything. And so I went down and worked my first TV opportunity, and I was a little starstruck by it, because I knew, man, at TNN, millions of viewers on TV was watching, but I didn't want to screw up. And so bull buck off and go to the other end, and I'd make sure everything was okay, and I'd just kind of back off. Well, after the first section of bulls, because he'd start with bulls and end with bulls, he rode over to me and he says, hey, I hired you to fight bulls in front of all these people on TV. I want you to do like you did before you was on TV. And I told him, I said, we'll never have to have that conversation again. And he knew exactly what I was talking about. I didn't like being called out that I wasn't doing what he hired me to do. So from that point forward, guy'd hit the ground, man, I'd go to him, whether they fought or not. And, it was more that they did fight in Neil Gay's pen. And then I'd go to other rodeos, and different stock contractors had a little different view on it. And they would always say, yeah, it's enough. Leave him alone. Leave him alone.
Yes.
And I always felt like that was encouraging to me when they were having to call me off.
That's awesome.
And I always felt like I wanted to be that dog that you had to call off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I say, I made a career out of it, but I think I stayed healthy. 25 years fighting bulls, and I'm pretty healthy. We could sit here for 30 minutes and talk about all the injuries.
Right.
But being able to fight through those injuries and things, I was, number one, a work ethic. I took care of my body and things like that. But when I would get hooked, when I was going to them and being aggressive, it seemed like I'd have less injuries than if I was playing defense. And I think that's probably true in any kind of contact sport. you know, and so that's probably what kept me healthy more than anything over the years. The things that it really, really hurt me and stuff was when I'd do things that, you know, when I love to jump bulls.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a huge vertical or anything like that, but it was all about timing. And then there was a few bulls that I jumped that I probably had no business jumping at all. But, boy, I'd get in the moment, and, boy, the crowd's just waiting for something to happen. And I'm thinking, here's my opportunity. And then just get hooked and come down, land on my head, weird. You know. And I broke my neck twice. And, you know, I have some issues with it now, but I wouldn't change anything, absolutely change anything, you know. And a big part of that is, and I'm sure you can understand this, but I always hoped that there was going to be somebody that watched me in some way, and it encouraged them or inspired them to at least ask me, hey, what makes you tick? Mm-hmm. And there was a great opportunity to talk to people about what makes me tick. And what makes me tick is I believe I was put on this earth for a reason. You know, I believe God has a plan for my life. And, you know, bullfighting it was just a short window of my life. But it was an opportunity to open a door for people to go, you know, where's your values at? And, you know, my values is keeping my focus that God has a plan for my life, and I'm going to continue to try to walk that plan out. I'd mess up from time to time, whatever, but he had a way of always bringing me back and living a life that was going to be encouraging, especially to young guys, you know, and what a great opportunity that was.